everyone, Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, Jamie Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Friday. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. And that means a visit from Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com on 3. Been a busy week, my friend.
It has, obviously. Spring game last night, a ton of visits on the basketball side earlier this week. Obviously, a ton of really good news from an Indiana perspective and filling out that roster. But now you go into, a bit of a not a low kind of dead period here, but you're starting to get the end of the open portal window with that closing on the 22nd. So things are slowly starting to kind of take shape and find its way back to a middle ground here.
Thank God. I'm worn out. It doesn't end. It's been pretty nonstop. But talking about last night, the spring game, talked about that a little bit with Zach and earlier, and I thought things looked pretty good, especially offensively. Your big quarterback is your new quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. Not only did Fernando look good, Alberto looked good. I thought Wilson looked good. They're thin at quarterback, but man, they are talent. They're better talented than they were a year ago, without question. Nothing against Taven Jackson, but I think if Alberto were to have to go in, he could play. I think he could actually play. I'm not saying he's his brother yet, because his brother seems like he just got that. He's got some zip in that arm, man.
No, he does. I thought he looked obviously, take it for what it's worth, right? It's Curt Cignetti talks about it's a glorified practice. You're not really going to learn a lot, but at the same time, it gives you a little bit more of a sense of what this team could potentially look like. Obviously, the playbook is nowhere near as open as what it's going to be like in August and September and moving forward. But it gave you a good sneak peek into potentially what the skill sets are on this team. And for a lot of people, right, the first time that they saw Fernando Mendoza, if they were at the game, outside of just a couple highlight clips that people have been able to see from social media. One thing I think a lot of people are probably going to be excited about is his mobility, and not even his mobility to be a runner, but to elude pass rushers. And I think that's one aspect of his game that is severely underrated because of just how under pressure he was last year, how many sacks he had. But, watching him last night, watching him last night, I think you can see he probably, avoided maybe 20 extra sacks last year at this point, just by his quick footwork, his ability to really, plant his leg and change direction just ever so slightly and elude the oncoming pass rush. And, he's going to be able to run the ball for Indiana this year and provide a little bit more value with his legs there. But I think it's more him getting out of the pocket and still finding a wide receiver as opposed to actually running the ball for yardage that's going to be effective and staying in the pocket and eluding some obviously pass rushers to be able to keep the play going on that you probably didn't see a lot last year with Curtis Rourke. It was pretty much going through the reads, hitting your wideout, which he did a phenomenal job at, but really not being able to provide a lot of other value when it came to his legs and his mobility there. Now, obviously, some of that may be because the ACL issue and everything that went on, but I think we know that this skill set that Mendoza has is and no knock on Curtis Rourke, but I think light years above what Curtis Rourke brought in to Indiana last year. And it's got to be exciting for not only this coaching staff, but obviously the players and the fans that did see it last night.
I agree 1,000%. And he looks sharp for spring. He's not been here very long. So, which doesn't mean a lot because it's the like you said, the playbook is pretty muted right now. But man, I remember when I saw him at Indiana's pro day, and I got to see him throw a lot of deep balls, and I'm like, oh my, he's got that. He's got that in him too. He can throw the pill down the field and put it on the mark. I think, man, when Indiana and the offensive line looked markedly visually better. The line of scrimmage was moving backwards, and this is against the number one defense. Now Indiana probably needs to add a guy or two there, but still, that's success. That's production that's moving forward.
No, absolutely. I think the interesting part was, right, obviously Elijah Surratt didn't play any snaps last night. Mekhi Jackson didn't see any snaps last night. So
I didn't see any snaps last night either.
Well, we're glad for that. But so you have two guys there that are, figuring to be obviously with Surratt and then Mekhi Jackson, two, very integral parts of the wide receiving rotation, right? Especially Surratt, a guy who's going to stretch the field and go deep there. Mekhi Jackson probably going to slide into that slot spot without Tyler Morris. EJ Williams had some good moments there. Obviously, we saw what Omar Cooper could do last year, and I think he showed a lot of really good progress and really kind of tried to take over that alpha mentality last night as well. So you're pretty set with that top end of the rotation there. It's more or less about what you can do with the remaining wideouts. I thought LeBron Bond potentially in that slot really showed some good progress. And
don't you just love just saying that name, LeBron Bond?
Yeah, it's a fun one. A much different body than the other LeBron that we've come to know. But 5'9", super quick, pretty explosive across the middle. But I think you have a lot of explosive playmakers on this roster. Lee Beebe, another guy who I think was, in my opinion, the very major standout from last night. Not only his ability to catch a ball and get out in open space, but the explosiveness that he has and the change of direction, the quickness that he has when he can plant and turn and go from the right side of the line of scrimmage to the left in the snap of a finger. I think that is something that not a lot of people may have.
So spring is in the books.
Sorry about that. Keep going, please.
No, so I just think that again, there's so many explosive playmakers on this roster that are going to make an impact in one way or another, and I think Cignetti talked about that a little bit last night. He made a joke about it at the very end where he's like, either we have way more explosive playmakers on offense or we need to get a lot better defensively, right? And I think it's a little bit of both, but I do think the emergence of the more explosive playmakers this year is something that you didn't have a season ago, where you had a lot more, especially in the slot and the running back position, a lot more kind of grind it out, pound it out. physical runners. I think you have a lot more elusiveness, fluid athleticism in those spots that's going to be very, very helpful, especially if you have a very good offensive line and create more of that space for a lot of those guys too.
Yeah, I asked Curt that question of that. It just seemed like there was more players that what I called with pop plays. In the beginning, BB, he wasn't doing much, and all of a sudden, boom, he had a nice play. The same with Roman Hemby. And the one that really stuck out, though, was a guy that's already been here, and that is Kalen Black, who took that ball, just a handoff up the middle, and it looked like he was shot out of a cannon. His speed, it was a burst. I mean, boom, you got to have that stuff. And then, of course, on and throwing the ball as well with the type of ball that Fernando Mendoza throws. I think this offense is going to be a team full of guys that have the pop possibility, as I'm calling it. And we didn't even see Elijah Surratt, and maybe they pick up somebody else, or maybe somebody grows through the summer and the fall, but they have playmakers. And yeah, that's exactly what he said. But it was apparent. You could see it. Also, it helps to be in your second year of doing this as opposed to the first year. But man, the offense is going to be better this season than last season, in my opinion, as long as they stay healthy, because they've upgraded the offensive line. And that was another place where I could see a difference. You could see that they weren't getting beat. They were protecting the quarterback, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in a real game. But they've improved. They've improved in the areas where they need to improve. That's how you win, baby.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you see the wide receiving room still, I think, needs another body. Whether that's, more, and Zach and I were talking about this too, Zach Browning, where, I think he brought up a good point saying they just need to add a pass catcher to that room, right? Whether it's at the wide receiver kind of group or at the tight end position, just someone who can be a little bit more of a depth piece there catching the ball. But I just don't think you can rely fully on a guy like EJ Williams, who's obviously had his health issues over the 2 seasons he's been at Indiana, to provide that consistent third wideout. And we know this team likes to have multiple wide receivers on the field. The one thing that we saw from the skill sets of these running backs, though, was their ability to catch the ball. And this is something that Curt Cignetti talked about during signing day a couple months ago, was they wanted to get more production out of the running backs in the pass catching game. And I think you saw that. There were, again, probably a little bit because of the playbook last night, right? But you just saw their ability. Roman Hemby had a couple really good plays in open space catching the ball. Lee Beebe had a 24-yarder. Kalen Black, we know he's a super versatile guy who can both create that pop on the ground and through the air there. But I think you're going to start to see a lot more designed running back passes there, I should say, passes to running backs, and allow them to get out in that open space. You have a very versatile and athletic offensive line too. So even if those are, short little swing passes out to the flat, get the running backs again out in open space, let them create some missed tackles. Lee Beebe, I think, had 4 or 5 missed tackles alone last night on a couple different runs. So this is a very versatile running back room that I think is going to help that depth in the pass catching game. But again, another guy that we didn't see, Drew Evans, on that offensive line, obviously, tore his Achilles middle part of the season last year. And this Khalil Benson, another guy that we didn't see, right? So this offensive line has very good depth from where a season ago their starting group was very talented and very good, but you definitely saw a drop off when they went to that second unit, and there were a couple rotational pieces in there. And I think that's the big difference. And that's one thing that Curt Cignetti talked about after they lost to Notre Dame, right? The Notre Dame, the Michigan, and the Ohio States, they have depth in the front seven, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the defensive line. They have full on 2 units you can rotate through, and you don't really miss a beat. And that's one thing that Indiana has always struggled with, whereas they can compete with the top teams when it comes to a couple of those front end rotation pieces, but you see a major drop off when you come in and bring in some bench players. So I think that's one thing that they really did a phenomenal job at a number of positions is getting quality depth that you're going to see really pay off in a lot of those big physical games that Indiana definitely needs to win this year.
I'll take one shot at hitting that answer from Curt Cignetti because it's hard to cue it up with from this position right now, and then we'll go to a break and come back and talk hoops news because there's plenty of that too. Yeah.
Our Michigan guy to the non-contact knee, Tyler Morris, and Becker made progress. And I also thought that the freshman, Bond, made progress. And we've got Chandler coming in. So I'm counting on Jackson coming back, which will help our depth. And EJ made plays all spring long. And with EJ, it's not having the mental lapse here and there, missed assignment here and there, that kind of thing. But I'm counting on him having a huge year for us. You know, he's a big target with great body control, excellent ball skills, and he's a threat.
Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there, sign up today.